Does it look like a cockpit to you?
Interesting stuff found online by THWL.
Sam and Jimmy are drone operators for a documentary film. They caught a UFO on the 19th of October 2016 in Beaver, Utah, USA. This interview is done by Brian Henley and was released on the 9th of January 2019. Let's have a look.
Yeah, so I work in the film industry. We're shooting a documentary outside of Beaver, Utah.
From Google Maps, you can see their actual location in the USA. Okay.
And so that was shot, maybe a couple miles outside of Beaver. And Beaver's like 2 hours north, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours north of the Nevada border. And we're just like, me and our drone operator, basically what we do is we go out and just find epic landscapes to use as B-roll in the film. And so we put up the drone.
The drone they used in 2015 was the DJI Inspire 1 that is no longer in production in 2021. You can see that the DJI Inspire 1 was a beautiful drone. And you can see all the specs here too. The drone camera was fully capable of 1080p high-resolution video at 60 frames per second.
Got some pretty great shots. We're probably like 400 or 500 feet away from the drone. Don't hear, don't see anything. Go back to our hotel room that night, go to dinner. Our drone operator kind of starts scrubbing through the footage. We just go through the footage every night just to make sure that everything turns out okay. And he comes up to us at dinner, and his face is just like totally white. He's like, guys, I don't know what I just saw, but we captured some crazy shit out there. And go up into his room and go onto the hard drive and he shows us the clip, and it's just we're shooting 60 frames a second, try to slow it down as much as possible, literally frame by frame by frame.
Yeah.
There was no way that he had messed around with the footage at all.
Okay, I was gonna ask.
Yeah, because it was on the raw. It was on the raw clip. And this was in 2016, so this was a few years ago. And, literally we're standing in the field, 400 or 500 feet away from this drone, and don't hear anything, don't see anything. Something traveling that fast would make a sonic boom.
The drone operators heard nothing and felt nothing, even though they were in the vicinity.
When we first saw it, we broke every single second of that clip down. And if you zoom in right at the beginning of that clip, you can see this thing comes down over through the valley and in the valley, and then it turns and it comes straight. So something traveling that fast, turning at that speed, that low, it's just insane.
The guys also got on a radio show called Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis. Here's the interview.
Went back to the hotel that night, and like we do every night after we shoot, just kind of quickly scrub through the footage, and that little moment caught our eye. So we just kind of zoomed in on it, broke it down a bunch. But the only other thing I'll say about the clip itself, going back to your point about how it's so blurry, we were even shooting that footage at 60 frames a second. So when you're shooting at 60 frames a second, you have double the amount of frames. And so theoretically, it should be cleaner, it should be crisper than just shooting something at 2039.8. So we had double the frames, and even then it's still blurring.
Let's just say this. The blur comes from the passing. It comes from passing by so quickly. But see, what you have is a clear pic that goes all the way up to point of crossing, and then bam, it goes so fast that it blurs out.
And bam! Propeller Head did a very cool analysis of the raw video footage of the UFO. Moderately wooded ridgeline, And this is Google Earth, by the way. Moderately wooded. 400% zoom from the raw footage. And watch the ridge line. Again, object emerges from shade of mountainside. Object obscured by tree line. And here, completely blocked. Object passes over ridge line. 800% zoomed. Object emerges from shade of mountainside. Object obscured by tree line. And here, completely blocked. Object passes over ridge line. Notice drone flight causes parallax. Foreground elements increase in size and track away from destination vanishing point. Fast forward. Background distance of more than 2.5 miles is so great there is little to no movement. Object has separation from vanishing point, yet does not track with the foreground or midfield. Object is barely visible and does not track with foreground. Foreground has tracked significantly, yet the object has only moved vertically and continues to have very little detail consistent with being far away. Object has sudden increase in speed perpendicular to camera. Can it be an insect, you may ask? Here's a flying insect found in the same video footage, zoomed 400%. The insect motion reversed and matched up to object in question. Again at 10% of original speed. We can use drone itself for a known distance. If this object passed within 12 inch of the camera, proving distance travelled, it was at least quarter inch thick. If it was further away, then it must be even larger. But 1 second starts here, less than 1 pixel in size. That puts it at least 160 feet away and constitutes a speed not capable of being performed by a bug. At 160 feet, that's 109 miles per hour. To originate that small and exit frame that large in 1 second confirms to me that it is a sizable craft traveling over 9,000 miles per hour. And parallax proves it.
Now I've already got a good proximity for where that is, as you might imagine. So let me try to match that up. And remember, all of this is information that I hope you guys will double check me on and cross check and do your own math and come back with some better information than what I've got. So this is where I think we are. Let's see, there's 2.5 right there on the side. So I suppose that's up to you to figure out if you want to use kind of round it to 2.5. Why don't we just do 2 miles? Let's just do 2. Let's say from there to the drone. You can see I've used a helicopter. 2 miles. So it flies 2 miles in 1 second.
From Google search, we can see that the rocket-powered aircraft moves at about 4,500 miles per hour.
And then times 60 minutes is 7,200 miles per hour. And of course, when we did 2.5 miles, we got 9,000 miles per hour. Pretty ridiculous sounding speed when we think in terrestrial terms, I suppose. We don't really have a familiarity with things that can go that fast.
There's another video from Brian Henley that showed the UFO has a cockpit.
And yeah, when it comes right past the drone, I guess probably the last 2 or 3 frames you can see, it appears to just, it appears to look like a little cockpit or something.
Does it look like a cockpit to you? Here's another video analysis of the UFO raw footage from Point Consciousness.
Does the Utah UFO resemble the Nimitz encounter and is a legitimate UFO? Or is it just an optical illusion from CGI? To answer that question, we're going to start with 3D camera tracking the footage. In case you're not familiar with 3D camera tracking, it is the process of analyzing the pixels of the footage and based on their motion, creating a replica of the actual camera that captured the footage. This is the best result we've got from the process. It looks promising. If you look at these points, they're matching the motion of corresponding pixels of the footage. In case you're wondering what these points are, they're called point clouds. An output usually generated when you do 3D camera tracking, so that later you can use them as a reference to check the accuracy of the 3D camera tracking.
Fast forward.
Using those 3 areas as references, this is closest we can get to match our 3D scene with a Google Map image. Now it's a good time to track the object. We are in luck because we have a starting point. If you look closely, you'll see the object goes behind that hill in the distance for a couple of frames, which means at least it is as far as that hill. Now where its trajectory ends, it should be close to the camera, of course, before it exits the frame. If we get the size of the object right in the beginning, it should automatically tell us where it exits the frame by looking at its size. Here's the approximate path the object flew by. Here you can see a 3D recreation of the object.
Fast forward.
At this point, you will see that it's possible to recreate this with CGI. But let's move on for now and see how big the object is.
Fast forward.
For 2 reasons, it is unlikely to be an optical illusion. First is that the object goes behind the hill at some points, which means it's at least as far as that hill, which is around 2 miles. Second, if you check its parallax, it's matching the parallax of the hill. Parallax, simply said, is the amount of motion objects move depending on their distance from the observer. The closer they are, the faster they move. The further they are, the slower the motion. So in our case, it is unlikely to be an optical illusion.
Fast forward.
It is where it gets interesting. Not only the shape of the object reminds us of the Tic Tac UFO in the Nimitz encounter, but also the velocity, which is approximately 2 miles in a second. And in Nimitz encounter, the pilots said that the velocity was about 10 miles in 2 seconds. That's close enough. And regarding the scale, if you check the pilot's testimony, they said the UFO's approximate size to be around 10 to 14 meters. In our case, it has turned out to be around 49 feet, which equals to 15 meters.
So the UFO is traveling at a speed of more than 11,000 kilometers per hour and is about 15 meters in size.
That is a major coincidence. At this point, if you still think it's not a UFO or UAP, you end up with two scenarios. Either it's a bird or bug, which is impossible because of its shape with no flapping wings, its trajectory with no dive, and unimaginable velocity. Or you're going to say it's a CGI. I'm not going to argue with that because I already created it. But if I were to create this in the first place, I wouldn't go to trouble of using a Google Map reference image and matching the size and velocity of the object with the Tic Tac UFO. Also, after releasing the footage, I wouldn't reveal my name or not even thinking about releasing the raw footage so people can analyze it.
Remember, we have the original cameraman coming out and releasing the raw footage for open analysis.
So if it is a UFO, you might ask, why we don't see these more often in the sky? Now pay attention, in both cases they are seen in remote areas and they are insanely fast. So it's not that easy to catch one of these with naked eyes.
The best UFO shots are usually caught by accident.
So if it is a UFO or UAP, is it human or is it non-human or AT? Of course it's possible for it to be either, but if you look at its behavior, in both cases, after the object realizes the presence of an observer, it flies by the object as if it's trying to scan it. If it were a secret military project, it would have already known what it's dealing with, and being a secret project, it would have been disappeared. So it's more likely for it to be non-human. And here's our final answer.
Do you now have an answer for yourself? If not, here's another video from Discovery. You can tell me what is it in the comments below. Remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video.